2026 election is more than a year away, but still plenty to talk about as we go through a primary process and then head into the bulk of what's going to be a high-flying election year with gubernatorial election up. Governor J.B. Pritzker looking for a third term, but some names stacking up for Republicans who want to challenge him and plenty of issues in Illinois for us to focus on. It is Illinois in Focus. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning here, and we just had a segment where we heard what Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson had to say and what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say about public safety in Illinois. And in particular, it looks like it's starting to be narrowed down to really focusing on illegal immigration and what the Trump administration plans to do in Chicago. But to discuss this some more is Ted Dabrowski, former president of WirePoint, but somebody who soon is expected to announce his intentions for a gubernatorial run. Ted, thanks for taking time with us this morning. When can we expect an official announcement from you?
Thanks, Greg. Excuse me. We should have an announcement within the next week, so I appreciate you having me on.
No, absolutely. And even if you weren't going to announce, you're somebody who's a wealth of information, and the way you analyze things is, we've featured it before here with Illinois in Focus and even with the Center Square. So let's just jump right into the issues. Obviously, you've watched what Governor J.B. Pritzker's had to say about public safety, about immigration enforcement. You've heard what Brandon Johnson has to say about it. Is this the right approach that the state of Illinois should be taking in opposing and putting up barriers to federal immigration enforcement?
Well, yeah, I think there's so many levels of wrong that both Johnson and Pritzker are doing, and if you followed WirePoints at all, you've seen that we've tracked the numbers, and I think the data has to do a lot to tell us what's going on. And for 13 years, and this will be the 14th year that we have led the country in total murders. 3 times more than Los Angeles in terms of murder rate, 5 times more the rate of New York City. And so we've got a big problem. We've seen the carjacking problem. We've seen the car theft problem. It's been massive. And yes, we have a decline this year compared to the highs of the last few years. But I don't think we should pretend that more than 260 murders in the South Side and West Side is somehow normal again. It's normalized. It's okay. We've seen all kinds of actions that have weakened the police morale, destroyed our policing, destroyed our prosecution, destroyed our sentencing, and therefore, the chance of a bad guy doing a bad deed and getting caught and doing time is almost zero now because the arrest rate is so low. We've got a deep problem, and we should be embracing support rather than fighting it. And I think the hypocrisy of all this whole discussion is we had the National Guard in for the DNC to protect the political elite. But to even mention that word National Guard when it comes to South Side and West Side, has somehow become a bad word. And that's a big problem we have.
Well, I don't know if you recall, I remember clearly the images of National Guard surrounding our state capitol here in Springfield right after the January 2021 when President Joe Biden was coming in, and they were stationed there for days. But obviously COVID going on then as well, and a lot of uncertainty about a whole host of things. But regardless, it's happened in the past where the National Guard has been brought into Illinois to help with public safety. So why do you think the apprehension there from the Johnson administration, the Pritzker administration? We saw what happened in Los Angeles, right? The National Guard came in to protect federal assets and personnel because there was riotous behavior going on. Should that be what we expect from Trump, having seen it already in L.A.?
Well, there's a few points. One is, look, we have made things worse in Illinois. We passed a Safety Act where we're the first state to entirely limit cash bail. So we've got more murderous or dangerous people on the streets than we should. We've ended car chases, foot chases. We've talked about, Johnson has pushed the defund the police in his starting before he started. We've really emboldened criminals. And Johnson has excused all the actions by calling the mob groups, young mob groups, as silly kids. So he is actually incentivized, or at least he's not tough on crime. And so we have made our own problems here, and we shouldn't relax just because the numbers are down this year. And by the way, the numbers are down nationally everywhere. This is not a Chicago phenomenon, so we can't take credit for what we did in Chicago. So, ShotSpotter was removed. There are so many things that we've moved in the wrong direction. And I would argue that Pritzker and Johnson are really more about protecting criminals than they are about protecting the actual victims. So we've brought it on ourselves. Now, I will say this, the National Guard is supposedly brought crime way down in D.C., and that's good news. But National Guard isn't a solution, right? It's not a long-term solution. It's a short-term solution to show the people that we care about them in the South and West sides. We're not gonna just say, hey, oh, crime is down, so we're not gonna protect you. But the real solution has to be to unwind all these bad policies that Pritzker and Johnson have done. Support the police again, bring the police morale way back up, because that's a starting point. People want more policing. We see that in polls all the time. We did a poll at Wire Points. People want more policing. They want good, fair policing, of course, but they want more protection. We should give them that. And we have to flip the model on its head. And Johnson and Pritzker are pursuing policies that allow more crime rather than stop crime.
Pritzker told CBS, and he's said it before, he wants to see more ATF. He wants to work more with FBI. He says that they already do that to a degree, and they could use more of that assistance. But there seems to be that fine line drawn about immigration enforcement. Why do you think that is?
They're trapped. We've trapped ourselves. I say, Pritzker and Johnson with the sanctuary state, sanctuary city policies. They've gone all the way in. We have to back up and say there's one thing. Governor Pritzker's running for president. He's running for the far left of the primary. He's staked out his claim there. That's his path. That means everything he does has to be against Trump. And he can't be seen as doing anything that would be against the unions, against his base. And so therefore he's trapped. He's trapped in the sanctuary state, sanctuary city type policy. At Wire Points, we've shown how much money we've spent on. We've incentivized illegal immigrants. We released the data on how much has been spent on health care for illegal immigrants. Now it's got to be close to $2 billion. We've prioritized the wrong people. We should be taking care of our own residents. And it's understandable why so many Latinos and so many Black residents are upset, because we keep prioritizing illegal immigrants over our own very residents who are struggling under a Pritzker administration and under a Johnson administration.
We're talking with Ted Dabrowski. He is former president of Wire Points, expecting an announcement on a gubernatorial run in the next week or so. And I appreciate you being here. Obviously, the crime issue, top of mind for Chicagoans in certain areas. You've got the ongoing question of the federal government and how they're going to enforce immigration. But one thing that Pritzker has said is we can use more money for violence intervention, for instance. And he criticized former Governor Bruce Rauner from more than 6 years ago, and also criticized President Trump for withholding certain types of violence intervention funding. For those who don't understand what violence intervention funding is, give us just a brief overview and whether or not it's successful.
Well, what it means is the government doling out more money to groups, spending tens and hundreds of millions, giving it to grassroots groups, you might call them that, or intervention groups, a lot of not-for-profits. And the big problem we have is that if you've looked at, exclude this year because things, the numbers are dramatically better in crime. They're better in crime across the country. But we've been spending lots of money on that, and nobody's clear about the outcomes at all. And when I say again, even if we have lower crime today, we'll still have, for the 14th year in a row, leading the country in murders. We have a sickness, and we have to really approach it. We shouldn't be leading the country in murders. And when you look at the 20 largest cities in the country, we have the highest murder rate. So we have the worst of both things. We need to be tough on crime, and that starts again with the police morale and supporting our police. If we don't start there, and if we don't prosecute right, if we don't prosecute, and if we don't sentence, that whole chain of arrest, prosecute, sentence, it doesn't work. And we've seen the revolving doors over and over. And we see CWB has done a great job of exposing all these people who are, alleged felons back out on the street, creating another felony, another murder, another shooting. And these kind of things have to stop.
Wanted to switch to education, Ted, as Governor J.B. Pritzker late last week before the holiday held a news conference about how much money his administration has increased in K through 12 funding. He highlighted some outcomes he says is showing Illinois is making progress. I know the work that you've done in the past really delving into these numbers and even looking at some of the education numbers at Illinois' report card from the State Board of Education. What do you take away from that? What's your assessment of whether or not more tax dollars going to K through 12 schools has actually improved the outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, more money has actually maybe made things worse. I think we've got such a bloated bureaucracy. Let me back up. I want to say that literacy in Illinois has to be one of our biggest priorities. And I mean literacy by measuring the numbers, by the actual metrics, not by how much we spend, but how many kids can read. And I want to reel off for you the actual numbers from last year, a few places. Rockford, black children, only 10% could read at grade level last year. Peoria, black children, only 9% could read at grade level. Quincy, white children, only 30% could read at grade level. I can go on and on. Waukegan, 16% for Hispanics. Decatur, this is, I think, the most interesting. White children, only 14% read at grade level. That is after we're spending $24,000 a kid in education across the entire state. And of course, we could talk about Chicago, where we spend over $30,000 a kid, and and only 1 in 5 kids can read at grade level. It's a disaster, and we shouldn't celebrate high graduation rates. We should not celebrate how much money we spend. We should again return to how many kids can read at grade level, and how do we get that number way up? And every year should be a trajectory of higher and higher and higher. And those should be the goals, not spending, not all those other things, all this DEI stuff we're doing in schools. We should focus on literacy and numeracy, because these cities will not succeed. They won't have a workforce if only 10% of kids can read at grade level.
And how do we get that focus on literacy? Is it a law that needs to be implemented? Is it maybe taking away certain mandates that there are put onto local school districts?
It's right, Greg. It's rethinking education, and there's no reason why Illinois can't be the leader in that. You've got places like Mississippi who are taking the leadership. There's things like, look, if you can't read in the 3rd grade, then you're in big trouble. And so, Florida, Mississippi have laws that say, hey, you can't go to 4th grade if you can't read in the 3rd. And, that makes everybody focus on reading. And, you bring the unions, you bring the teachers, you bring the companies in the city, bring everybody, volunteers, everybody obsesses about literacy. And if we don't get to that, it's all a joke. We're wasting money, and most of the kids can't read. There's also the talk of school choice, right? We need to give more choices, because the longer it takes us to fix these public schools, the longer kids are trapped there. And we know that the wealthy people can move to a private school, move to another district, move to a good public school district. But everyday Illinois can't, and we should really help them have choices, because in Indiana, every kid has a choice about what school they attend. Same thing in Iowa. They all have school choice. In Illinois, not a single kid has school choice, unless they're wealthy, of course.
Ted, the election's coming up in 2026. Got a primary we got to get through. There's going to be plenty of opportunity to talk about a whole host of other issues. But, obviously, when we're talking about education, you can't not recognize the state having the highest property taxes, which the state of Illinois really focuses on, how to fund local schools using local property taxes. How do we get that down? Is it more state money going to education and trying to relax?
Watch out there.
Yeah. So tell us what the answer is there to lower the property taxes in the state of Illinois.
You'll hear a lot of politicians say, well, we just need to take more ownership at the state level, basically increase spending at the state level and decrease spending at the local level. That's just another trick, because, that doesn't change how much this government is spending, right? They're just moving it from one pocket to the other. So I'm very cautious about that. We need to take the steps that lower overall taxes, period, not have any games being played. And so, there's a lot that can be done. One of the things that is the biggest albatross around our neck are these pension debts. And, we continue to dole out pensions. Governor Pritzker just signed a bill to increase Chicago pensions. And Chicago can't afford them. They're already broke. I think we're going to see checks get slashed at some point. Pension checks get slashed because the hole is so big now. So I think we need to do something like 401ks for new workers. It's constitutional. It's what everybody else, it's what ordinary everyday Illinoisans have is a 401k style plan. And we should be fair and have what's good for the private sector should be good for the public sector. There's things like Pritzker signed increased spiking for salaries for teachers at the end of their career. So that was another thing that was done. We have the most units of government in the country. In Illinois, by far. You add up some of our neighbors, we have more. We add them up, and we still have more units of government. And there we have bloat, duplicative administration, superintendents, assistant superintendents, all this administrative bloat that shouldn't be going on with huge pensions. So that's the kind of stuff we need to look at and make it fair to everyday Illinoisans, because if not, everyday Illinoisans will keep leaving. We've got counties that want to secede. We've got the highest out-migration in the country, except for New York and California. This state, let me be clear about this, Greg, this state should be a top 5 state for growth, for economic prosperity, for education, where you raise your kids. And right now we're a bottom five state in just about everything. And that's why people are leaving. Highest property taxes, second highest gas taxes, doubled by Governor Pritzker, the highest cell phone taxes. I could go on. And that's what's making everyday Illinoisans suffer. And they shrug their shoulders. They've lost hope. And I want to bring back hope, because we can fight back on these things. We got to expose them, talk about them, make the legislature address them, make the media address them. Thank you for having me on, Greg, to talk about these issues. But the media doesn't address them either. And that's one of the big goals is to make sure everybody knows what the problems are, because you can't fix problems that you won't acknowledge.
You mentioned the governor in the education and the property taxes and the outbound migration that there is. I don't know if you saw the governor late last week down in Southern Illinois. He was asked about the separation movement, and he said, either you can stick around and help make the state better, or you can, if you want to move. What's your response to somebody who, is the governor of Illinois telling people, if you don't like it here, go ahead and pack up and move?
I think it tells you everything you need to know about Governor Pritzker. He's had almost 7 years to lower property taxes. He doubled gas taxes, as I mentioned. He's had a chance to make this state the state that it should be. But outmigration is increased with him. If it wasn't for the illegal immigrants coming in, our population would be even more shrunk. He's doing all the wrong things. And I think when he says that people move out, I mean, that's, I don't like to name call, but that's crazy talk. You don't tell your residents to move out. You go down there and you listen to them and you address their concerns and you work with them. And look, if we had low taxes and whatever, it'd be one thing. But Governor Pritzker, under him, he has refused to lower property taxes. They've only gone up. He's raised taxes overall. We have some of the highest taxes in the country. And people can't afford to live here anymore. It's too expensive to live here. They look elsewhere. In Indiana, and the borders are right there, and those other states are growing their populations. We're not.
Ted Dabrowski, former president of WirePoint's potential Republican gubernatorial candidate. We'll be waiting to see that announcement come out, and I'm sure it's going to give us the opportunity to talk about not just taxes and economy, but also some of the other issues. I know the audience here with Illinois in Focus has been watching closely what happens with the Second Amendment issues, so that's something else we'll have to talk about with you, but there's a whole host of other things as we march forward the primary in March, and then also the election in November. So greatly appreciate you taking the time with us.
Well, thank you, Greg. I just want to remind everybody, this is a fantastic, great state. We just got really bad politics and politicians that are driving it down. So if you want change, we can get there.
Ted Dabrowski, greatly appreciate your time. We'll talk again in the near future. This is Illinois in Focus Daily, each and every weekday morning here with you, only with the Center Square. All right, so make sure you wake up with us and stay plugged in as we go live to tape each and every weekday morning. Reconnect or not? I just got the note here that it disconnected. Okay. It did come back on eventually. All right, good stuff.